Hello, my name is Haley Arnett, and today I will be talking about employment discrimination in the workplace. The things we'll be talking about in this presentation: the definition of discrimination, the definition of employment discrimination, how to identify employment discrimination, the harms of employment discrimination, the evidence of employment discrimination, and how to end and prevent employment discrimination. So what is discrimination? According to the New Oxford American Dictionary, discrimination is defined as the unjust or prejudicial treatment of different categories of people or things. Discrimination comes in many forms like racial discrimination, which is called racism, age discrimination, which is called ageism, and sex discrimination, which is called sexism. What is employment discrimination? Employment discrimination is a specific type of discrimination that is suffered by employees at the hands of their employers based on their sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, race, ethnicity, religion, physiological disability, or age. Employment discrimination, like other forms of discrimination, does not have to be intentional and explicit, but it can be accidental and implicit. Many people, though they do not realize it, are guilty of accidental discrimination. For example, a person that purchases their Asian friend a new calculator as a gift because they assume that all Asians are excellent at math might mean well, but they have just engaged in a prejudicial action. This type of unintentional prejudicial action occurs at the workplace as well, because stereotypical beliefs are not required to be checked at the door. How can we identify employment discrimination? We can identify employment discrimination in two main ways, those being the quantifiable way and the non-quantifiable way. In the quantifiable way, employment discrimination is determined by observations of outcome between equally qualified parties. For example, if person A works the same job as person B and has the same educational level, works the same number of hours, and yet earns significantly less, it is likely that there is discrimination involved. In the non-quantifiable way, employment discrimination is not determined by observation of outcomes between equally qualified parties, but it is determined by observation in other areas. Take person A and person B again and assume that they now earn the same amount of money. While receiving equal pay, if person A is not given the same opportunities within the organization as person B, or is treated in an inequitable way, it is likely that there is discrimination involved. Is employment discrimination harmful? Despite the obvious ethical wrongness of employment discrimination can be harmful to employees and employers. For one, employment discrimination harms employee job satisfaction and motivation. Employees that sense that they are being targeted based on the above reasons are clearly going to feel less fulfilled by their current occupation. Employment discrimination also negatively affects employees' loyalty and company perception. Employees that are experiencing or witnessing discrimination in an organization are much less likely to stick around for the long run, and understandably so, are more likely to have an unfavorable picture of the organization. An organization's name can be tarnished by the presence of employment discrimination. A bad reputation leads to multiple negatives, such as poor employment recruitment, high employee turnover, bad national and community image, and etc. Finally, because it is illegal, employment discrimination often leads to lawsuits. Lawsuits hurt organizations in multiple ways. They, for one, are expensive, they are embarrassing, and they look awful to those utilizing the organization's services. Now let's look at the evidence for employment discrimination. First of all, on race. In an eye-opening study by Bertrand and Mulathan, job applicants in the United States of America with white-sounding names received 50% more callbacks for interviews than those with African-American sounding names. A similar study by Pager, Bonikowski, and Western found that white job applicants for low-wage jobs in New York were twice as likely to receive a job as their equally qualified African-American counterparts. Now let's look at the evidence of employment discrimination based on sex, gender, and sexual orientation. Only 20 of the states in the United States of America have laws against discrimination based on gender identity and sexual orientation, which is quite amazing considering the current cultural climate. Just north of us in Ontario, Canada, a 2011 study found that female workers that work the same jobs with the same amount of hours as their male counterparts earn 26% less. This is better than 3 decades ago, when female workers earned 36% less. Now let's look at the evidence of employment discrimination based on age. Out of 1,500 Americans aged 45 to 74 involved in a survey put on by AARP in 2013, a significant number, around 64%, reported that they had either seen or experienced age discrimination in their workplace. Of that, 64%, 92% said that age discrimination was a common occurrence.
Yeah.
How to end and prevent employment discrimination. There are 4 steps that we can take in order to prevent and eventually end discrimination in the workplace. The first step to ending discrimination is calling attention to it. The step is initiated by the victim or bystander and is directed at the perpetrator. This step can be achieved through many mediums and is accomplished most effectively when both the victim and the bystander collaborate in their efforts. The second step to ending discrimination is accepting its occurrence. This step, while its achievement can be encouraged by the victim or bystander, must be taken by the perpetrator. If the perpetrator is not willing to accept that they have acted prejudicially, then tension will increase and improvements cannot be made. The third step to ending discrimination is making intentional changes. This step belongs to the perpetrator, though it can be supported by the victim and the bystander. Making intentional changes can involve changes in law, policy, changes in behavior, and changes in attitude. The fourth and final step to ending discrimination is open conversation. In order to prevent discrimination from creeping back in, mouths cannot be muted and ears cannot be deaf. In other words, people need to remain in open dialogue and voices need to be respected. If conversational lines are not closed and feelings are not discounted, then we have a good chance of leaving discrimination behind us. And so that concludes my presentation on employment discrimination. Thank you for watching.